listening to the Art of Homeschooling podcast, where we help parents cultivate creativity and connection at home. I'm your host, Jean Miller, and here on this podcast, you'll find stories and inspiration to bring you the confidence you need to make homeschooling work for your family. Let's begin. Today, I want to talk about a concept I call better than curriculum. Now, you might be wondering, what could be better than curriculum? After all, that's one of the most often asked questions from homeschoolers. What curriculum should I use? Especially at the beginning of the homeschooling journey. But I'm here to answer that question today. What's better than a curriculum plan? Your plan that you create. Here's the thing. Just following a curriculum rote is terrible for consistency and pretty much always fails. That's right. I know it might be hard to believe. After all, we think we need to learn from the so-called experts and do what they tell us to do. We all think we want a curriculum plan that's open and go, that's so easy we don't even have to do much. But I'm here to tell you that there's really no such thing as an open and go curriculum. I hate to break it to you. It's just that someone else's curriculum was written for, well, someone else's children. That's why I advocate for starting with a daily and weekly rhythm as the very foundation, and then learning to build your own homeschooling plan rather than relying on someone else's plan. If you missed last week's episode on finding your homeschool rhythm, I highly encourage you to go back and have a listen to that one after you finish here. You can find it at artofhomeschooling.com/episode 168. I know this is counterintuitive, but a curriculum actually offers you too much variety, too many options, and not enough repetition. Even though we all think we want more variety in our lessons, more ideas to bring to our homeschools, and at the same time, we assume that inexperience is the main reason we don't stay consistent. But none of that is actually true. What happens with a purchased curriculum is that you have to bring a lesson every day that's new and unfamiliar to you because we didn't write the plan and we don't always have time to read through the entire curriculum beforehand. Am I right? Honestly, how many times have you actually stuck to a curriculum that you've purchased? I want you to pause right here for just a moment and answer that question. If you've ever purchased a homeschooling curriculum before, how long did you stick with it exactly as written? I know that I never kept up with a purchased curriculum for longer than a few weeks. Seriously. We're talking over a period of 23 years of homeschooling. And I've rarely met a single homeschooler who stayed consistent with following someone else's curriculum to a T longer than a week or two, 3 at most. We like the idea of someone else creating the plans, someone else who is an expert homeschooler, right? But when we're actually trying to create something new on a daily basis, following someone else's plan never gives us the opportunity to really dig in, to create habits on autopilot, because we're not giving ourselves enough repetition or enough time to digest it all. It's not our fault. It's the nature of following a pre-written plan or script. We're just jumping from one thing to the next day after day without really seeing the whole picture, without experiencing the depth of the plan. This is why rhythm is the place to start. It's through repetition that we can actually become comfortable with being the leader, the teacher in our homeschools. This is how we learn to homeschool, by doing it. I'll give you an example of this in just a moment. When we don't have rhythm established, which simply means a repeated set of learning activities, in this case, activities that can flow from one to the next. When we don't have this, our brain is having to work extremely hard. The amount of effort that you have to expend to start from scratch each day, decide which lesson from the curriculum to do, what else to add in, what to leave out, to try and work out how you're going to fit this in before maybe needing to take another child to an activity, what to do if you have most of the supplies, but you're missing just one or two things, not really knowing how long the lesson will take. When you have that experience on a daily basis, as exciting as all the new ideas may seem, it is outweighed by how much effort you have to expend. It actually cancels out any benefit. You perceive that the curriculum lesson is going to be better than something you plan yourself. And you've most likely experienced that horrible feeling of decision fatigue. Because even though it seems like it's all laid out in front of you in a purchased curriculum, it can still seem so daunting because there are many, many micro decisions along the way when there's so many options to choose from, particularly. And you end up giving up altogether because it's just too much effort to do something that you're not used to doing. I know buying curriculum is exciting. I've been there, right? I know it's really exciting to begin with. It's exciting when you choose the curriculum, when the box arrives. But the truth is, there are just too many options inside. A curriculum author does this on purpose because they want to give you lots of options, but it's simply too much content. And you don't actually follow through because the perceived effort and all the decisions that you have to make on a daily basis are just too much and it's too difficult. It's exhausting. As I said, the person who wrote the curriculum wrote it for themselves, not you, and they've added in lots of extra options. Instead, I want you to make your homeschooling easier without having to spend hours and hours every week. You'll be more successful if you start small and build from there. Don't overcomplicate things because when we do, we don't follow through. Here's what this might look like. Come up with your base components to your lessons each day. Something like simple songs and verses, a story, artistic activities, and skills practice. This is where the concept of rhythm can really help you. Each of these components can flow from one to the next in a similar order or a similar pattern each day. Then you just need to spend 10 or 15 minutes every few days planning what those components might consist of. It's as simple as that. Accept the fact that you're a busy person, that you don't have lots of time. This is how you can be successful. Why do it this way instead of buying curriculum and setting aside hours and hours of time to make a plan from that? Because it will take you less time when you do it yourself. You'll feel more empowered. And then when it comes time for the lessons, they'll go more smoothly if you make the plan yourself with just this simple framework I've described. I see this happen all the time. It's even happened to me. We think we need to spend tons of time planning and preparing, but inevitably at some point you come to a day when you haven't had time to prep and plan, right? What then? How can you keep moving forward without giving up? Here is how you do that. By having this simple framework of a few lesson components that you've identified are exactly what your child or your children need, and then you can pull ideas together easily. If you're not sure what songs or stories or components to choose, start with an outline perhaps of the typical blocks in each grade. I have one on my website called the Waldorf Block Rotation, which I'll link to in the show notes. You can just have a look at it gives a list of ideas for each grade, topic ideas, subjects for each grade that match the developmental stage of the child. And then you can choose stories from perhaps books you already have on your shelf or your local public library. I also have a great list of favorite books per block called the Block Outlines for grades 1 through 8. And it's inside my Homeschool Simplicity bundle. It lists hundreds of books and resource ideas by grade. I'll be sure to link that in the show notes as well, which you can find at artofhomeschooling.com/episode 169. If you already own some homeschool curriculum, which is perfectly fine, you can use it as a resource. That's really the best way. Check it out for stories, for songs, for verses, for skills practice ideas after you've decided which block topic you want to bring to your children. Just remember that you do not need to start at the beginning of the curriculum and work your way through day after day. I'm telling you from experience, that doesn't usually go very well. Instead, I hope I've encouraged you to create your own homeschooling plan from a super simple framework. It's better than curriculum, I promise. I believe in this wholeheartedly, not only because of my own experience homeschooling 3 kiddos, but also from the countless conversations I've had with homeschooling parents over the last 10 years. This is exactly what I help homeschoolers do: create their own customized homeschool plans that are simple, inspiring, and especially above all, doable. It really is the best way to go, no matter where you are on your homeschooling journey, and it beats curriculum any day. I think I might be the only homeschooling mentor who says you're actually better off not following someone else's curriculum. And I'm on a mission to help all kinds of holistic homeschoolers discover simplicity, plan truly authentic lessons, and thrive living the homeschool life. Please reach out if I can help you. Thanks so much for tuning in today. And don't forget to check out the show notes at artofhomeschooling.com/episode 169 for links to all the resources I've mentioned here. Catch you next time. That's all for today, my friend. But here's what I want you to remember. Rather than perfection, let's focus on connection. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Art of Homeschooling podcast.